Assalamu alaikum, family. Peace be unto you. Welcome to the Sajdah channel. This is Sajdah's Monday morning motivation. We got a few things we're going to talk about today. Primarily, we're going to discuss how many of us are programmed to defend the matrix. And because of that programming, we can't see straight. We have no discernment. We can't critically think because we're so programmed not to. So grab your coffee. I got mine. I got me some decaf this morning, a little pumpkin oat creamer. It's fall time, y'all. And we'll be right back in a couple of minutes. Don't go anywhere.
O Allah, guide me among those whom Thou hast guided thee right, and preserve me among those whom Thou hast preserved, and befriend me among those whom Thou hast befriended. Bless me in whatsoever Thou dost grant me, and deliver me from the evil of what Thou hast judged. Surely Thou judges, and none can judge against Thee, and he whom Thou befriendest is not disgraced. Blessed art Thou, O Lord, and exalted be Thee above what they set up besides Thee. I bear witness, nothing deserves to be served besides Thee, and I bear witness that Muhammad is Thy servant and apostle. Amen.
Assalamu alaikum, family. Peace be unto you. Welcome to the Sajdah channel. How is everyone doing this morning? Oh, y'all woke up Monday morning popping in this chat, huh? Okay. I see you. Listen, yes, Mom, it is New Month Monday. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited. I'm excited not only about the new month, I'm excited about life, and I'm excited to be living in the midst of this cosmic shift that is relieving us from the burdens of things that have weighed down our family, our parents, and our ancestors for years. So I'm excited to be living in this day and time. You know, when we talk about the fall of America, the fall of the dollar, I think sometimes we isolate that and don't think about it as a major part of a cosmic shift that is happening. Okay. I don't know if we think about that. Not sure. But we should. Things are changing. Things are being exposed. If there's going to be a shift in power, a shift in spiritual recognition, then there has to be the shedding away or the burning off of existing systems, processes, and mindsets that have been crippling us and hurting us for hundreds of years. And part of this shift that's happening that sometimes we don't put the whole picture together, and I want to attempt to do that today. Many of us are struggling with discernment. We don't know what to think. We don't know what to think about the election. We don't know what to think about all these arrests and murders in the community. We just don't know. And so we're confused, a lot of us, because we're really, in essence, in the middle of a shift. And that shift includes deprogramming ourselves, okay, on a collective basis. For many of us in the Nation of Islam, we've been working on this deprogramming for a very long time, okay? So if, for myself, I came into the Nation of Islam in 1990, I understood the power of a name. I understood to drop my slave master's name. And a lot of people, they are so proud and attached to these names, but it's not your name. Okay. It's a name that was assigned to us during slavery to represent who owned us and where we lived and whatever other. It's like an imprint or a brand. So if that morning you were owned, let's say this morning you're owned by James Jackson, then you would be, in my case, I wouldn't be Sajdah, I'd be Wendy Jackson. And then let's say tomorrow, the slave master Jackson that owns me sells me to Craig Thomas. Then tomorrow, I'm Wendy Thomas. So that name changes based on ownership. And so when we come into the Nation of Islam, part of the symbolism of separating ourselves from that old mindset is dropping the name. So that's why you'll see us. We'll be so-and-so X. And then later, once we get into our spirituality and really dive into it, we became Muhammad. Most of us, for me, in 1998. And so the name Muhammad represents the spiritual journey, not only the religion, but it represents the original name of God, if you will, one of the original attributes. So there's this programming. We are then taught to decolonize our tongues. So we're taken off of pork. We don't eat things that are heavy on our digestive systems that cause us to have low immunity issues or immune deficiency issues, like eating rough things like collard greens and sweet potatoes all the time. We're taught to be mindful of mixes, food mixes that can contribute to diabetes, like sweet potato pie. And then we were given the navy bean as a way to encourage nutrition, and because of the nutrients and the minerals in that navy bean. And we made the navy bean pie, and there's navy bean soup designed to boost our immune system and give us an alternative to the food that we were accustomed to eating, the scraps that we were accustomed to eating as a people. So we don't eat chitterlings or chitlins no more. We don't eat hog maws. And, we're given a list of ingredients when we come in the nation, and we take that list of ingredients with us to the grocery store. And we realize that anything that has, 20 ingredients isn't what we think it is. So if you get a bag of French fries and it's got 15 ingredients in it, then it's not really French fries. So we're taught the concept of not eating processed foods. Even our pots and pans, we no longer use aluminum pots and pans. Why? Because aluminum, now there's studies that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad received his revelation directly from God himself. And so he was so ahead of his time, the research had to catch up to him. But aluminum is known now to cause Alzheimer's and all kinds of issues. We are not vaccinated, because many of our children that are vaccinated are now suffering from autism and a number of different allergies and issues like that. Even with a lot of the modern immunizations that they're just hawking all over the place, you literally can see the aging process occurring in people who are addicted to these vaccines. If they're tied into the matrix, and I'm sorry to hurt anybody's feelings, but this is just the truth, it's clear to see. And for some people, especially if you already have cardiovascular risk issues, if you got some kind of issues with your liver, sometimes you'll see it impacted when people are vaccinated. If you got issues with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, you'll see it impacted. People start to become a little bit more arthritic. You see it in their faces. They're inflamed oftentimes. There's stiffness. There's a whole slew of studies that have been done, and the way they hawk in these vaccines is unbelievable. But so we're taught that our pharmacy is our kitchen. And so we're taught to be disciplined enough with our herbs, our spices, our food combinations, what we introduce into our bodies, because our food and our gut is one of the gateways to our brain. Okay, you got your eyes, you got your mouth, you got your hearing. All of these things are gateways, and your gut is it's why a lot of times when you feel nervous or upset, you feel it in your gut. And so we're taught to lengthen our lives and not shorten our lives, right? By introducing unnecessary chemicals. And a lot of these things are, and don't get me wrong, let me say this, there are certain vaccines that have been properly researched and that are okay to take. But then there are others that have not been properly researched. The challenge is the level of trust that you can or cannot have for an industry that is so rooted in money and finances that, you don't even really know what you're getting. And a lot of us go to these little clinics, you go to the pharmacy and you get a vaccine. It's not even a doctor's office, where when they inject you, if you had a reaction, they could do something about it. Or even where they would evaluate your overall clinical disposition and say, okay, this vaccine would be good for you and this wouldn't be. I remember when I started traveling to Africa, I went to see a doctor about the list of vaccines because I have allergies. And she gave me a full physical and said, okay, this one's good for you. This one's not good for you. I said, look, here's some of the alternatives that I'm taking. She eliminated about half of the list because of her clinical evaluation of me, knowing that they would be risk factors to me with allergies. But nowadays, I was just in CVS the other day and they were like, want a flu shot? Want a flu shot? Want a flu shot? I'm like, whoa, there's no doctors giving you the shot. You just go back to the back and you just take it and you go, well, let's hope let's hope it works out. You playing Russian roulette. Let me pray. That's not, we have to deprogram ourselves from the matrix. Okay. 99% of the people who get the vaccine still get sick. And then they say, well, it probably wasn't as bad as it would have been. You don't know that. You really don't know that. So this is not a vaccine conversation, but this is about being programmed by the matrix and how we have been taught against this programming for many years. And we've been practicing it, and it takes time. And so a lot of us right now, we're looking at the election, we're talking about vaccines, we're doing all this stuff. We're going, I'm confused. I don't know what to do. And most of us are making the choice based upon our programming. Okay. And so that's one of the things I want to talk about today. And then the last part I want to talk about is a lot of us are experiencing trauma because of betrayal. And I want to talk about how sometimes that betrayal is a reflection of our self-betrayal. If we have time, we'll get into that. If not, we'll pick up on that tomorrow. But let's go back to this programming, okay? Depending on a lot of times when we were born, how we've been institutionalized will impact our programming. And there's programming that we were subjected to, especially if we grew up during the era of the Industrial Revolution. And I'm going to show a video that gives you the top 10 facts about the Industrial Revolution. And I want to talk about that and how that has impacted our educational system and how it's impacted our everyday decisions, how it's impacted our ability to discern or not discern, how it's impacted our inability in many cases to do for self. Because we came through this industrial revolution where a lot of us think these companies are God. We really believe in these companies. So if certain company, especially if it's a name that we've known for a long time, like people like, oh, I want to get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because you've seen that name for so long. But then that was the main one that was causing problems for people. We have created gods out of these companies. And we don't understand that that's a programming that has been put into us. And then we're seeking jobs from these people. We're taking all kind of abuse. And I'm not hating on corporate America. I'm just trying to get you to decolonize and reprogram your mind. So let's acknowledge who we got here in the chat. And then we're going to show this video. I see you, Sister Betty. Welcome, welcome. She says, happy Monday to everyone. I see Nubia Latifa is here. She says, good morning, all. I feel like this is the first time in a month I've been able to get back here. Well, welcome back, Sister Nubia. We are welcoming you. We welcome you with open arms. If you were here, we give you a big hug, and I'm grateful for you to be here. Brother Lamont, welcome, welcome. Thank you, sir. Good morning, and wa alaikum salam to you. Brother Robert 11X, wa alaikum salam. Welcome, welcome. Mom says, Happy New Month Monday. Welcome. Garland Mack says, Assalamu alaikum. Love these coffee talks. Thank you, Brother Garland. So do I. Mimi says, day early on a new month. Yes. Nubia said she recently changed her name. I definitely attribute parts of that to my learning from the NOI. Praise be to Allah. Yes, yes, and yes. We have to break away from the programming, but first we have to understand that the programming is real. I gave you guys an assignment years ago to go and get a copy of the book Brainwashed, where our brother says in there that the brainwashed have now become the brainwashers. And there's so much, this technique of doing business, of programming and brainwashing has become so much of a mainstay of our culture that people can't think straight. They can't decide for themselves. Sister Monica's here. She says, Assalamu alaikum. Great Monday, everyone. So now I'm going to put this video up, and there's the top 10 facts about the Industrial Revolution. Let me give you a little backstory, okay? And I'm going to cut in a little bit on this and make some comments about the Industrial Revolution as we're going through it. This is some of the modern day programming that's impacting a lot of us. It's why we're so trusting and allowing people to put things into our bodies that we don't even have any idea about. Somebody can just say something on television and we will run out and go spend $1 or lay our life down on the line and say, yes, yes, yes. A lot of it has to do with the massive PR campaigning that occurred during the Industrial Revolution. Now, let's paint the picture here. The beginning aspects of capitalism and how the U.S. economy was built was based on free labor. Okay, so the businesses went to Africa, kidnapped people, brought them here, took everything away from them and made them work for free for 400 years. Okay, the first ship arrived here in the United States, according to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, in the year 1555. Okay, and then slavery was so-called abolished in 1865. So there was free labor. Okay, then the North and the South, they started to battle over people who wanted to industrialize the nation versus people who said, no, 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 we need to keep the free labor. Civil War happened. The Emancipation Proclamation was signed. The slaves allegedly got free. But in the South, they said, we're going to still keep the process of slavery going. We're just going to call it sharecropping. So you're still going to work for free, in many cases, pennies on the dollar. And we're going to get our crops out here without any line item on the balance sheet that says labor. Okay, period. And so imagine how much money you could make if you have people around you just doing stuff around your business for free and you didn't have to pay them every 2 weeks. That's basically what was happening in the economy. Okay. Then up north, you had factories starting. You had stockyards. They started processing meat. You had railroads. In some places in the South, they started to imprison people, which they're still doing today, putting people in prison. Y'all saw the movie Life, so that they could work in these places for free. Okay? Because if you were in prison, you lost all your rights and you worked on the chain gang or whatever. So now you got these factories up north putting signs along the Mason-Dixon line saying to Black people, if you come up north, you can exchange your labor for an hourly wage. Okay. I believe that was started primarily with the stockyards. In a lot of the industries like the railroad, we weren't allowed to work on them because it was reserved for other ethnicities. This country has always been like that. So you had the Irish that were here, they were abused and were working on the railroads, but the stockyards became something that opened up to us. And so I actually saw one of the signs inside of the Swift Mansion here in Chicago that was along the Mason-Dixon line, where it was telling Black people as they were migrating north, come and work for the stockyards. And so then the factory started saying, well, we want to educate people and control their minds so that they will work for us. So they created this culture, this corporate culture, where there was fast food available for lunch. Why? Because back then there was no fast food. There was no microwaves. They didn't want you to go home and have to actually make your food, or the amount of time it would take for you to make your food was a lot. And after the war, women started to work and be in the field. Primarily, this is for white women, because for Black women, we've always had to work. There's a few Black women during time where our men were able to allow us to stay home, but for the majority of us, we've always had to work, whether it was cleaning houses or some kind of domestic work. But most Black women have always had to have some form of employment. But more white women began to enter the workforce. And so they said, okay, we got to start developing food and things that they can eat, where they can eat real quick on lunch because they don't have time to go home at night and cook. So some of the war rations like Spam and tuna, canned tuna and things like that became dietary staples of those generations. Certain canned food, but primarily like Spam, tuna, lunch meat, bologna, the processed meat and stuff like that they were war rations, but they became part of the dietary fabric of the people who were working in the factory, because they want you to make you a quick sandwich. And so they started making foods that were quick like that. Okay. Again, I can talk about how that diet change then impacted us as a people. That's why most of us have high blood pressure and diabetes, because we started eating this fast food so that we can work. Okay. So then there was this programming that took place, and people were so happy to have these jobs. And they made it like it was such a big thing. They created this program called benefits. People were so happy that they almost started to worship these jobs. So whatever lifestyle the job encouraged us to have is how we conducted ourselves. So however they told us we needed to look, whatever we needed to wear, how we needed to act, that was the corporate way, and that's how people conducted themselves. Okay, so I'm going to show you this Industrial Revolution fact video so that you can kind of see the trajectory of programming and why we don't see it. Let me go one more point before I show this. Not only was the programming happening with the parents at work, but the programming was happening in the school systems, because the idea, especially in a lot of these large industrial areas, was that you would graduate from high school, like in Detroit and Motor City, and you go straight from high school into the factories. So there wasn't a big push on college. Later, when there became a bigger push on college, then the idea was you go to college and then you go working right into corporate America, not to open your own business or anything like that, but right into corporate America. So when you were taking people from high school and putting them right into industry, you had already programmed them. The bell ringing, So we have a bell that rings in the morning when it's time to go to class, a bell that tells you when it's time to change class, a bell when school is over, announcements over the intercom. This was all part of how the factory functioned. When the bell rang, it was time for a break. When the bell rang, it was time to change on the line or whatever. But this bell ringing concept, they got us programmed to that as children. So we started changing classes. We had a few minutes in between class, so we got the breaks. They got us used to it. Okay. The classes that we were taking were not classes that were designed to help us do for self, but they were classes that allowed us to get a job. So people were like, well, if you take typing, you'll always get a job. If you take this class, you'll always have a job. So we would take these classes and then we'd see the ad in the paper and we go, oh, I already know how to do that. So I can go do that. I can go apply for this job. And they would hire you. And the better grades you got, meaning that you did a better job at checking the box based on the system that was created, meant that you could go into the corporate world and be a manager. So a lot of students went from high school and college into management trainee programs. Okay. So all of this is programming from the Industrial Revolution. Everything that we're doing is all about, in many cases, an offshoot, I should say, of the Industrial Revolution. This is why we can't think straight. Then you have candidates, and the companies would back the candidate that was most friendly to their business. And so then the propaganda around that was created. And so they would do all these subtle things to make us more endearing to a particular candidate. And then they give us time off work to go vote because they know more than likely you're voting for the candidate that supported them. All right, so here we go. Let me get this up here.
Channel World History Explorers, where we explore the history and culture of the world. I'm host Shane, and today we're going to talk about the Industrial Revolution in the United States. The Industrial Revolution was a period of major economic and social change, began in Europe and then spread to America. It transformed the way people lived, worked, and interacted with each other. So let's dive into some interesting facts about the Industrial Revolution in the United States. Fact number 1. The Industrial Revolution started in the United States in the late 18th century. It began in New England, the textile industry, where cotton was spun into yarn and woven into cloth. This innovation led to the growth of factories, and it was the first step toward industrialization. Fact number 2. One of the most significant inventions of the Industrial Revolution was the steam engine. It was invented by James Watt in the late 1700s, and it powered many machines in factories. It also revolutionized transportation with the development of steam-powered locomotives and steamships. Fact number 3. The Industrial Revolution brought a shift in the way people worked. The traditional system of artisans and craftsmen was replaced by factory workers. The workers, many of whom were women and children, worked long hours under difficult conditions. Fact number...
Let me stop there and say something. When you start talking about how we interacted one another was dictated and programmed in us by the Industrial Revolution. This is what also happened. You know how we live for the weekend? We can't wait till Friday. And then some of us hate Mondays. That's a direct offshoot of the programming that occurred from that workforce mindset that we were given. Okay. So on the weekend, Friday night, we partying, we got songs, just got paid, we kicking it. We don't want to go back to work on a Monday because we didn't have such a good time on the weekend because we've been away from work. So we start interacting with each other more on the weekends. We started living in certain neighborhoods and started moving around because so here's the thing. A lot of us lived in housing projects or in neighborhoods that were near the factory where our grandparents lived. And then our parents came along, and the companies wanted to be able to utilize as marketing how well you were doing, like your place in the middle class, to make other people want to work there. So if your people work for a certain company and they had a nice car and they were able to get a house in the suburbs, then most people would say, well, where they work at? Oh, they working for the railroad. They work for IBM. And that made other people desire to work there. So that was a form of marketing to get you to come up out of those neighborhoods and go live in the other neighborhood. And so the other Black people would see you, you dress nice. And so how you dressed and how you presented yourself was all marketing for these companies. So it changed the way we interacted with one another, as opposed to saying, all right, now I'm making more money. Let me fix up my neighborhood. Let me save up my money so that I can own a new business. It was the exact opposite. So we were doing things that was taking us away from the focus on self, which was then making us the envy of the neighborhood and the envy of the people who were around us. So there was this constant bragging. I work for IBM. I work for Xerox. I work for this place and that place. And I'm not just singling out those people, those companies, but that's just how it was. I work for Ford. Oh, wow, I work for John Deere. And so people were bragging on that. And then we looked at their houses and their cars and said, okay, they got a good job. Not they're smart. They started their own business. They're taking care of their community, but they got a good job. Let's keep going.
Number 4. The Industrial Revolution led to the growth of cities. Many rural farmers and small-town workers moved to cities to work in factories. The population of major cities like New York, Boston, and Philadelphia grew rapidly. Fact number 5. The Industrial Revolution led to the growth of new industries, including iron and steel production, petroleum refining, and the construction of railroads. These industries were crucial for the development of the American economy.
All right, so let's stop right there. If these industries were crucial for the development of the American economy, then the owners of those industries became very vested in politics. They became very vested in your and my lifestyle. Even when you go back to how much influence the pharmaceutical industry has around the world, they are vested in our lifestyle. They don't want you waking up going, wait a minute, what is this you're putting in my body? Let me see the ingredients. Let me make sure I go see a doctor who can properly evaluate me and see if this even makes sense for me. Is this thing risky? Is it a problem? I had a doctor that said to me, these particular vaccines are too risky for you with your allergies. And so she gave me some alternatives and signed off. So when I traveled abroad, I had a note. Right. So that, it's an interesting process. And I'm not even going to tell you which one she told me to take and which one she told me not to take. But my point being is that because these industries are so critical to the American economy, they have a vested interest in your and my mindset. And so a lot of the programming that we find ourselves struggling against has been orchestrated and written by these powerful industries that want to stay powerful. I hope y'all getting this.
Fact number 6. The Industrial Revolution also had a significant impact on agriculture. The introduction of new machinery, such as the reaper, led to a significant increase in agricultural productivity. Fact number 7. The Industrial Revolution brought significant social changes, including the rise of the middle class. As the economy grew, so did the number of people who were able to live more comfortable lives and have access to education and healthcare. Fact number 8. The Industrial Revolution also led to the rise of labor unions. Workers organized themselves to demand better wages, working conditions, and protection from abuse. Fact number 9. The Industrial Revolution had a significant impact on women's roles in society. Women began to work outside the home in factories and offices. This new role led to greater independence and economic freedom for women. Fact number 10. The Industrial Revolution transformed the United States into a global economic power. The country's factories and industries produced goods that were exported all over the world, making the United States one of the wealthiest nations in the world. And that's it for our 10 facts about the Industrial Revolution.
All right. So now when we think about what's happening now, when as a country, we don't produce anything or very little we produce. When I was in China, I literally got nervous because I was like, man, we don't produce nothing. Everything's made over here. So with that being said, that would tell you now, do we need to shift our educational system? Do we need to shift our thinking? Do we need to shift our thought processes? There's so many downstream behavioral traits and trauma that have come as a result of this type of programming. Why is it trauma? Because a lot of us have bought into the behaviors and the mindsets, but we have not gotten out of it what we thought we were going to get out of it. We just buying into something just because we think we should buy into it. Some of us got a retirement. We go, okay, I'm retired. But could you have retired if you did for self? Probably. Could you have retired better if you did for self? Probably. Many of us are retiring on pennies. Pennies on the dollar after years of working in industry, in corporate America. And so we're confused because we live our lives to party. Now we say we've been so programmed to get free and party Friday and Saturday night that when we retire, we just want to party. And we're not thinking about giving back to the youth. We're not thinking about now, oh, here's my opportunity to do for self. Here's my opportunity to enrich my family. A lot of us aren't thinking about that because we've been so programmed to get free and go party. It's real talk. And so this programming also impacts how we interact with each other, in that because we gave up so much of ourselves, our choices, our rights, our mindset, our creativity, our authenticity, we gave it up to this industry or these industries. We gave up so much of that, and those muscles now have atrophied. When we're interacting in our relationships with one another, it's even very difficult for us now that healing has become all the craze for us to even heal. You know why? Because we've been programmed to not take responsibility for ourselves. We've been negotiated out of our position as gods. And so we don't even think about how we represent ourselves and how the way in which we represent ourselves impacts how people respond to us. And when people respond to us in a certain way, we get upset because it may not be the way that we want them to respond to us, but it's the way that their programming is causing them to respond to our programming. So we're not functioning as gods. We're still functioning as little slaves. So what do you do in the corporate world? Something happens to you and you go and you write a program or you write a system. Something happens on the line. Something happens in the process. Something doesn't work. So we go back and we now rewrite the program. We rewrite the policies and procedures based upon the fact that XYZ happened on the line. Guess what we're doing now? We do it in our lives. So instead of us going, how did I contribute to this behavior or to this situation? We say, I'm going to write a new rule. So we have this rule-based way in which we live our lives. Something happens, we create a rule. Something happens, we create a rule. So you see us worrying and searching. Every time we see something on television, we're sitting there worrying and searching to figure out how do we create a rule around ourselves to prevent that from happening to us. That's backwards thinking, y'all. We have to be thinking as gods, and we have to go into the situation, controlling our environment, understanding how our vibration influences the situation. And instead of saying, let me create a whole rule, going, okay, I was vibrating a little low there. Because what you're doing is you setting off stuff, but you don't want to take responsibility for it. So it's this corporate mentality. And if you were a good student, you probably practice this really well. And if you're in a situation and somebody betrays you, somebody hurts you, somebody does something to you that you don't want or you don't think they should be doing, you immediately go into, all right, what's the rule? What's the rule that I can create? Okay, just like I'm the factory manager, what's the rule that I can create to prevent this employee from cutting up or to punish them from cutting up? As opposed to, how did the conditions of the work environment contribute to the behavior that was experienced? Same thing in your life. How did the conditions that you presented based on how you represented yourself, how did the conditions that you created based upon how you represented yourself dictate how this person treated you? See, it's all this matrix thinking. And so even now, when we're looking at the election, we're trying to figure it out within the context of the matrix. We're not thinking about, most of us can't even list out 10 things that we would want a candidate to do for us. We can't think about it. Or we haven't even tried. I would challenge you. Write out 10 things that are important to you, and then pick the candidates, federal, state, and local. I'm not just talking about the national election. All of them. Pick the candidates that support those 10 issues, or at least most of those 10 issues, or maybe just one of those 10 issues that are important to you. When's the last time you did that? All right, police brutality is important to me. Small businesses are important to me. Economic development in our community is important to me. Whatever they are, whatever's important to you. A lot of people use terms like, and when you hear the language, let me say this. We did a show a couple of weeks ago where we talked about DEI being destroyed by lawsuits, right? This is a nod towards the dismantling of workforce development. Because what these people are saying is, don't develop no workforce for them. That's discriminating against us. So that's a challenge against the old school workforce development. What are we doing for people who are incarcerated, especially with the massive number of people in our country that are incarcerated, many of them falsely, many of them with excessive sentencings, many of them with issues not being addressed of mental health, whether their family didn't address it, whether the institution didn't address it. See, because in our families, especially with Black people, we waiting on the school to say something. So if little Johnny got a mental problem, we want the school to tell us that. And we want the school to dictate to us how we should do it. And now they say, well, we'll give you a check. If you got a disabled child, we'll give you a check if you just allow us to tell you how you need to treat them. And so that's what we wait for. And then when they grow up and go out into society and they get put in jail, they go to jail and they just experiment on them and give them drugs and see how this works and, play around with their organs and all of that kind of stuff. And we don't say anything. And then they come back out and they come back to the community. We don't know what to do because we never took ownership of it. So that's important. I think the government should help us with that. There needs to be funding. That's an important issue to me. But just make a list. For me, I look strictly at what the Muslims want and believe. It's on the back of the Final Call newspaper. I believe that program needs to be presented to Congress. And I look to see how every candidate supports what's on the back of that, what's on that program, the Muslim program. That's important to me. Are we going to be supported in doing for self? Are you going to leave us alone so that we can open our businesses and introduce much needed goods and services into our community? Or are you going to support price gouging and antitrust laws that you have in place that you don't want to enforce? Don't get me started on that. Point being is, it's the programming, and we have to decolonize ourselves. We have to decolonize ourselves in every single way. We have to decolonize our tongue meaning what we put into our mouth, what we say out of our mouth. We have to decolonize our eyes, how we see things, our level of discernment. Are we able to mathematically think? Probably not, because if you went to school during this industrial revolutionary period of time, you're not taught to mathematically think. There's no critical thinking needed when you're working in a factory. There's no critical thinking needed when you're walking into a corporate situation and the policies and procedures have already been written. You're not judged on how well you critically think. You're judged on whether or not you follow the rules and check the box. And we're doing the same thing in our lives. Same thing, it trickles right on down to our lives. That, you know what? I'm going to tell you what's even at the bottom of that. You know how people create rules, and if they see, we get worried because we say if they see one black person doing something, they're going to think we all do that. That's really an ignorant way of thinking. But this matrix has people programmed that way. So anyway, I hope this helps. Hope this helps us today. Let me see your feedback. I see some of you all have commented a lot about retirement, controlling, all of that. Yes, yes, and yes. Take time today to work on your mental programming. Take time today. Work on your mental programming. Decolonize yourself. Take yourself out of the matrix. Begin the process. You're not going to be able to do it all at once, but it's a process. And if the program of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is already laid out for us, start first with your diet. Just start with your diet. Just because you see a restaurant pop up in the hood, that don't mean it's okay to go there and eat. Sister Nubia said, what was the brainwash book? It's called Brainwash. It's called Brainwashed. What else was I going to tell you guys? Yeah, the restaurants. Don't just think that just because the restaurant pops up, it's okay to eat. Just because they say it's chicken don't mean it's chicken. You should be researching. You should be paying attention. You got to be very mindful about what you're putting into your body. So start there. Don't let people inject things into your body and you don't even know what it is. And then it's not even a person. They ain't even got a 4-year degree. It's a person working in a pharmacy with a 9-month certificate. They couldn't do anything if you had a reaction right there on the floor. We got to start taking more responsibility for ourselves. There's no spook God out here that's going to take care of us. Okay? It's like if you violate certain laws, even if you pray to God, you're still going to be affected by the law. Now, he might get you out of it, but if you go up on top of this building and decide you're going to jump, the law of gravity is still going to impact you. Now, you might pray and maybe instead of breaking both hips, you might just break one. But yeah, that's not, think about laws are still there for a reason. So yes, get Tom Burrell's book, Brainwashed. The book is called Brainwashed, written by Tom Burrell. Okay, family, Nana Kosei Ventures, welcome, welcome. I see you in the chat. Thank you, thank you. There's coffee talks that we did. Go back and check out DecaFest. Did you all see that the Sajdah Oud brand has started? I gave out some samples yesterday, and people were Saturday, and people were really, really, really excited about it. So I'm excited about it as well. So go back, check out the DecaFest. I think that was a really great series. I'm working on turning it into a book, so you guys will be able to see it. If you enjoy this content, go out, send a donation, a support via Cash App. I am going to give, I keep telling y'all because I'm getting ready to make this big announcement for Sajdah House. We got some things happening, but get your Ouds. We got some t-shirts coming out. The retail portion is going to be open to help with some of the cash flow because as you all know, this is a very expensive undertaking, and we look like, inshallah, we will be done by the end of the year. So we need your continued support. If you want to sponsor, send me an email, sajdahhouse@gmail.com. And I'm going to start showing you guys some videos of some of the work that we're doing. You'll be able to see that, inshallah, starting next week. All right. Peace and blessings, family. May Allah bless each and every one of you. I'm wishing each of you more love, more goodness than you've ever experienced or imagined. Oh, shout out to the University of Illinois Department of Religion. I was blessed to host them Saturday. We took them to Mas Mariam. They toured the National Center campus. They got a chance to see the rehearsal for the classical concert that our students were putting on. And then they came to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House Museum. They enjoyed some bean pie and some bean pie ice cream. Y'all know we got the Sajdah ice cream, courtesy of Brother Yahya and Sister Nataki at Sean Michelle's homemade ice cream. It was delightful. We had a great time. We learned a lot. We created some friendships and some bonds. And that's what this is all about, right? Let's get up out this matrix and realize that we oftentimes have more in common than not. All right. Peace and blessings, family. Love you all very much.